Betrayed. Broken, reborn. This is Novel Binge.
After they framed me for a data leak, I revoked my identity, and Cloud City locked them out. 7 years of loyalty ended with one liability statement. They thought I was disposable, till the system they wanted to steal refused to recognize them. Day DAA. When Ching Jisia pushed the liability statement across the table, the conference room went so quiet that the only sound left was the low hum of the central air conditioner. The paper was thin. The words on it were not. According to the preliminary internal investigation, the data breach at Yundun Technology was caused by negligence in permission management within the technical department. As technical director, Giyu Chen shall bear primary responsibility. I looked at the final line. The signature field was blank. Beside it lay a black fountain pen. Chin Jixia sat at the head of the table. Her long hair was neatly pinned up, and she wore a white blazer with a small pearl earring at one ear. She had never liked pearls before. She used to say they looked too soft and did not suit her. After Lu Jingheng returned from overseas, she changed many things, including this. She did not look at me. Lu Jingheng sat on her right, holding a printed copy of the access logs. He placed the folder on the table and spoke in a mild, almost regretful tone. Director Giyu, these access logs do come from your internal account. At 1:42 a.m. 3 days ago, someone used your credentials to export the third batch of building port data. Someone sucked in a breath. Someone looked at me. More people lowered their heads and flipped through the documents, as if meeting my eyes might drag them into the blank. I did not speak right away. That account string was too familiar to me. Familiar enough that I could type it blind. Familiar enough that I could tell at one glance the timestamps had been taken apart and put back together, but I did not expose it on the spot. I only looked at Chin Jixia. Is that what you think too? Her fingers paused on the pen. At last, she raised her eyes. The glance was brief, so brief it felt less like hesitation, and more like confirmation of a process she had already accepted. She said, "Yu Chen, now is not the time to argue about right and wrong." I smiled, faintly. No one else in the room laughed. She lowered her voice, the way she had countless times over the past 7 years when she needed me to clean up a mess for her. "Just admit it." Lu Jingheng frowned, looking troubled. "Jixia, I know you and Director Gu have worked side by side for many years, but Yundun's IPO review is about to begin. Regulators and investors are all watching us. We have to give them an explanation first." Chin Jixia did not correct him. She only looked at me. "Gu Chen, cooperate for now. Once the pressure dies down, the company will compensate you." Compensate. The word pierced my ear like a fine needle. 7 years ago, when Yundun's first test server overheated, I stayed in the server room for 2 nights straight. The year our funding nearly collapsed, I mortgaged the old house my father left me to pay for servers and link audits. 3 years ago, when the South Line subway gates malfunctioned, I dragged myself out of bed with a high fever and spent the entire night writing the emergency patch. Back then, Chin Jisia told me, "Yu Chen, Cloud Shield is the lifeblood of both of us." Now, she wanted me to take the fall, to admit to the leak, to admit to criminal liability, to accept the blame Lu Jingheng had pushed onto me. I picked up the liability statement and turned to the last page. "Is this your decision, or the company's?" Chin Jixia froze for a moment. Lu Jingheng spoke before she could. "Director Giyu, separating the two at a time like this is meaningless. It matters." I placed the document back on the table. "If this is her decision, then I'll take it as the first honest thing she has said to me today." Chin Jixia's face paled slightly. I looked around the conference table. Directors, executives, legal counsel, technical leads. Everyone sat on both sides, waiting to see which way the knife would fall. "If it is the company's decision, then I will follow company procedure." Chin Jisia frowned. She probably disliked my tone. In the past 7 years, I had rarely spoken to her like that. She was used to me quietly taking over while everyone else argued. Used to me handing her a repaired system report when she was exhausted. Used to me never asking why, never demanding an explanation, only delivering the result she needed. So she thought this time would be no different. She said in a low voice, "Yu Chen, don't make a scene." I looked at her. "I'm not making a scene." I pushed the pen back. "I'm not signing." At last, the room had sound again. Someone coughed. Someone shuffled papers. Someone dragged a chair back by half an inch. Lu Jingheng sighed. "You're only making this uglier." "What's ugly are the logs." I glanced at him. It wasn't me. For 1 second, his gentle expression froze. Then, it returned to normal. Chin Jixia tightened her grip on the pen. "Gu Chen, you are suspended from all duties and must cooperate with the internal investigation. Starting today, you are not allowed to access any of Yundun's core systems." "Fine." I stood up. This time, she froze. She probably expected me to explain, argue, or ask her why. I did none of those things. I picked up my badge from the table and turned toward the door. When I reached it, Chin Jisia called my name. "Gu Chen." I stopped. Her voice dropped even lower. "Don't push this too far." I turned back. Chin Jixia, you are the one who pushed the liability statement in front of me. The hallway outside was lit in harsh white. The light stung my eyes. I closed the conference room door and shut out every stare behind me. Everyone in the technical department knew I had been suspended. When I returned to my desk, the whole office was unnaturally quiet for 3 in the afternoon. Someone pretended to stare at a screen. Someone closed a chat window too fast and clicked the wrong place. Shu Yan stood up from the back-end team section. Brother Chen. The team lead beside him grabbed his arm. Shu Yan ignored him. I shook my head. Don't come over. His eyes reddened at once. What right do they have? I unplugged the old keyboard from my desk. The keycaps were polished smooth from use. This keyboard had been with me for 7 years, from the first prototype of Cloud Shield to its later integration with hospitals, subways, government service halls, and financial centers. Some letters on the keys were almost gone. Chin Jixia once joked that the keyboard was too old to belong in the new office. Back then, I said it was fine as long as it still worked. Thinking about it now, many things were like that. No one minded when they were useful. The moment they could no longer take the blame, they became outdated relics. Lin Man walked over in high heels. She was Chin Jixia's secretary. In the past, whenever she saw me, she politely called me Director Gov. Today, she placed a permission handover form on my desk and spoke in a strictly businesslike tone. President Chin requires you to hand over all project code, API credentials, historical audit backups, and any test accounts in your possession immediately. I looked up. The company code is in the repository, API credentials are on the authorization platform, audit backups are stored on the dedicated regulatory link. All test accounts were deactivated 3 years ago. Lin Man frowned. Mr. Liu said, you may still have a private backup. Mr. Liu. I repeated the title silently. Liu Jingheng had been back in the country for less than a month, yet he had already gone from consultant to chief strategy officer. I had spent 7 years here and was still only technical director. I opened my computer. Lin Man stared intently at my hands, as if I might activate some city-destroying program at any second. I did not touch the code repository. I did not touch the core console. I only logged into the company's terminal management system, restored my workstation to factory settings, cleared my personal cache, and invalidated the local certificate. Then I submitted my resignation. In the reason field I wrote 2 words, personal reasons. A confirmation dialog appeared. Confirm submission of resignation and internal identity deactivation process. After deactivation, this identity will be removed from all management chains and trigger a corresponding permission recovery audit. I stared at it for 3 seconds. Then, I clicked confirm. Lin Man frowned. What are you doing? Resigning, according to procedure. She was visibly startled. President Chin only asked you to step aside for the investigation. She didn't ask you to resign. I won't accept a suspension. I closed my laptop. I'm resigning. Shu Yan hurried over, his voice trembling. Brother Chen, what will happen to the system once you leave? I packed the old keyboard into my bag. The system has its own procedures. They don't understand anything. Shu Yan lowered his voice. Liu Jingheng asked me this morning whether the offline signature verification in the core server room could be skipped. I said no, and he said his overseas team could work around it. Shu Yan. I cut him off. He fell silent. I glanced at the lowered heads across the office. From now on, every operation must go through a work order. Don't accept private tasks. Don't follow verbal orders. Don't bypass procedure for anyone. Shu Yan seemed to understand something. His face changed. Lin Man said coldly, Wu Chen, are you threatening the company? No. I took off my badge and placed it on the desk. I'm reminding you that Cloud Shield isn't ordinary office software. As I walked out of the office, I heard someone whisper behind me, he's really finished this time. I did not look back. Just before the elevator doors closed, I saw Chin Jixia standing at the end of the hallway. She seemed to have just come out of a meeting room. She was still holding that fountain pen. She looked at me. I looked back at her. Across the length of that corridor, 7 years suddenly felt like a lifetime. The elevator doors closed. My phone vibrated once. The internal identity deactivation process has been submitted. Estimated completion time, 10 minutes. I put the phone back in my pocket. 10 minutes. Enough time for them to change their minds. Also enough time for them to lose their chance forever. When I walked out of Yundun Tower, a light drizzle was falling over Cloud City. The electronic screen outside the building was still looping Yundun's promotional video, making every door safer. In the footage, Chin Jixia stood at the center of a press conference, smiling with composed elegance. Behind her was a blue line map of the city. Hospitals, subway stations, government service halls, luxury residential communities, financial centers. I had drawn the first version of that map. Later, the design department said it looked too plain and turned it into what it was now. I stood at the base of the building for a few seconds. Then my phone vibrated again. Identity deactivation complete. Immediately after a second notification appeared. Cloud Shield management link changed. Security review initiated. I turned off the screen. Rain tapped against my umbrella. The sound was very soft. At the same time, on the 23rd floor of Yundun Tower, Qing Jixia was standing outside the core server room with Lu Jingheng. Xu Yan told me what happened later. Qin Jixia wanted Lu Jingheng to formally take over the core permissions. She personally led the team to the server room, partly to show the board and partly to send a message to the technical department. The access control system recognized her face. The screen first lit up blue. Then, it turned red. Current management link abnormal. Please complete security officer review. Qin Jixia frowned. She tried again. The red light remained. Lin Man said quietly, President Qin, could Director Gu have failed to hand everything over cleanly before leaving? Lu Jingheng smiled. Old systems often have leftover checks. Don't worry, I'll handle it. He swiped his temporary executive card. The door lock did not even respond. Only a colder line of text appeared. Unregistered identity. No server room access authorization. The scene went silent. Qin Jixia's expression became extremely unpleasant. She asked the technical department, what is going on? No one dared to answer. In the end, Xu Yan forced himself to speak. The core server room permission chain requires security officer (view). Qin Jixia looked at him. Who is the security officer? Xu Yan did not speak. The faint amusement on Lu Jingheng's face disappeared. The CEO is the legal representative. How could she not have authority? This system is designed far too rigidly. Xu Yan lowered his head. It's a regulatory requirement. Qin Jixia shot him a cold look. Call Gu Chen. When I received Xu Yan's call, I was sitting in a taxi by the roadside. The driver asked where I wanted to go. I had not decided yet. Xu Yan's voice was very low. Brother Chen, the core permissions are starting identity review. I looked at the rain outside the car window. It's not about recognizing people. Then, what is it? Follow the work order procedure. President Qin wants you to take the call. I'm not taking it. She said, it's a company order. I was silent for 2 seconds. I'm no longer with the company. The other end went quiet. After a moment, Xu Yan said, they say you maliciously blocked permissions. Tell them to write that in a work order. I hung up. The driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Young man, where are we going? I gave him an address. It was the apartment I had rented. Over the past 7 years, Qin Jixia had told me more than once to move in with her. Later, she said the company was at a critical stage and it would not be appropriate for employees to know about our relationship. So, I never moved. Looking back, that was good. At least when I left, I did not have to take back my own toothbrush. Lu Jingheng moved faster than I expected. That evening, an internal notice was sent throughout Yundun. Preliminary investigation has revealed that during his tenure, former technical director Ji Yu Chen committed serious violations, including chaotic permission configuration, non-standard log retention, and suspected installation of an unregistered backdoor. The company has initiated a full-scale rectification process. Former technical director, suspected backdoor. The words were chosen well. They did not directly convict me, but they were more than enough to invite speculation. Half an hour later, local tech accounts in Cloud City began publishing articles. Unicorn company Yundun suspected of being turned against by former employee. City security system exposes permission black hole. Does suspended technical director still hold citywide access? After reading the headlines, I turned my phone face down on the table. My rented apartment was small, 1 bedroom, 1 living room, with a view of the elevated highway outside the window. At night, the car lights formed a continuous line, like an endless chain of data. I had just boiled a pot of water when someone knocked on the door. It was not really a knock. It was pounding. Mr. Gi Yu, we're reporters from Cloud City Daily. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Did you maliciously lock the core permissions after being suspended by Yundun? People online say you hold the security keys to the entire city. Is that true? I did not open the door. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end was crisp and efficient. Gu Chen, this is Joe Ran, investigative reporter from Cloud City Daily. I'm outside your door. You're more polite than the self-media people downstairs. So, are you willing to answer? No. Then I'll have to write based on the available information. Yundun claims you left a backdoor, causing abnormalities during the core server room takeover. I walked to the door. Light from the hallway filtered through the peephole. Joe Rand stood in front, short hair, wearing a black jacket with a voice recorder in her hand. I spoke through the door. If you really want to investigate, don't start with the back door. She looked up. Then where should I start? Yundun's external access IPs over the past 3 months. She paused. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. Are you implying the leak wasn't yours? I'm telling you the real problem isn't standing behind my door. Someone outside heard my voice and immediately crowded closer. Gu Chen, do you admit you still have the key? Are you taking revenge on Qin Jixia? What exactly is your relationship with President Qin? I gave no further answer. Zhou Ran stood outside in silence for a few seconds. Then she suddenly asked, Gu Chen, why don't you just release the evidence? I stared at the door panel. Because it was not enough yet. Because Yundan was connected to the city's public systems. Because every move I made had to be cleaner than theirs. I could not treat ordinary people's safety as a bargaining chip. Why Lu Jingheng did. In the end, I only said, go check it. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of water. It was scalding. I held the cup and let the heat slowly sting my palm. Then my phone screen lit up again. Qin Jixia was calling. I stared at her name. In 7 years, she had rarely called me herself. Most of the time she only sent one line. Come over. Check the system. Don't leave tonight. Now, she was calling. I answered. Her first words were, Gu Chen, what exactly do you want? I laughed. That's my question for you. Her voice sounded tired. I'll have the PR team contain the online situation, but you have to come back and cooperate with the system recovery. I didn't cause the system abnormality. Then why did everything go wrong? As soon as you left. Because I left. Silence came from the other end. She seemed not to understand. Or perhaps she understood, but refused to admit it. Gu Chen, don't take your anger out on Yundan. I leaned back in my chair. Qin Jixia, you still think I'm throwing a tantrum? Isn't that what this is? At last, there was a spark of anger in her tone. Lu Jingheng only came back to help me. Are you really going to let this destroy everything between us? Does that make sense to you? I closed my eyes. Suddenly, many words were no longer worth saying. I asked, have you submitted the accountability materials? She paused. Only for a second. But that was enough. Gu Chen, the company has to follow procedure. So have I. That was only preliminary material. It doesn't mean. I hung up. The water had cooled a little. I took a sip. It tasted bitter. The next morning, personnel from the monitoring center came to my door. The person leading them was Han Lan, deputy director of the Cloud City Smart Security Monitoring Center. She brought no reporters and no police. Only 2 staff members. She showed me her credentials and spoke in a firm voice. Gi Zhen, we need your cooperation in an investigation regarding the Yundan technology data leak and abnormal access to city security permissions. I nodded. Let's go. She glanced at me, probably not expecting me to be so cooperative. Reporters were still waiting downstairs. As soon as they saw me come out, they rushed forward. Gu Chen, are you being taken away by regulators? Did you admit to leaving a back door? Has Qin Jixia contacted you? Han Lan stepped between us. Do not obstruct official work. I lowered my head and got into the car. The car door shut, cutting off the noise outside. Han Lan sat beside me, with a file on her lap. She did not ask about the case immediately. Instead, she asked, Gu Chen, are you still planning to take the fall for Yundan this time? I turned to look at her. Director Han knows me. I've seen your name in regulatory filings. Her tone was calm. Over the years, Yundan has had quite a few incidents. The South Line Metro misjudgment, the whitelist, drift at the financial center, the access conflict at the old building of First Hospital. In the end, the person who submitted the rectification reports was always you. I said nothing, but those reports were never signed by you. Outside the car window, Yundan Tower grew farther away. I said, I'm just the technical director. Han Lan looked at me. Do you really believe that? I did not answer. She took me to an interview room at the monitoring center. The walls were stark white. A camera sat on the table. She sat across from me. Let's start with the data leak. The logs submitted by Lu Jingheng show that the export action came from your account. The logs were tampered with. Evidence? The original chain. Do you have it? Not at the moment. Han Lan tapped the table. Then on what basis are you making that judgment? The timestamps don't match the behavioral trail. She looked up. I continued. My account never performed a batch export at 1942 AM. That's the inspection window. Any activity on that account at that time would be flagged as a highly sensitive operation. To export data, dual approval would be required, and the action would sync to the regulatory side. Han Lan asked, so you believe there should also be a record on the regulatory side? There should be. What if there isn't? Then it wasn't my account. Han Lan stared at me for a long time. Did you submit an identity deactivation when you resigned? Yes. Do you know what that triggers? A standard permission recovery audit. She did not respond. She only closed the file. Gu Chen, Yundan claims you maliciously retained backdoor access, causing the system to enter an abnormal state. Qin Jixia has already submitted an internal statement unfavorable to you. I lowered my eyes. I know, you're not surprised. I asked her last night. Han Lan fell silent for a few seconds. She asked you to come back and restore your permissions. Yes. What did you say? I hung up. Han Lan suddenly smiled faintly. So you're not completely stupid. Someone knocked on the door. She stepped out to take a call. When she returned, her expression had changed. There's a problem with the emergency access channel at Cloud City First Hospital. My head snapped up. It was the first time I lost my composure since entering the monitoring center. Han Lan saw it. You know why? Who accessed city-level permissions? She did not answer. I stood up. Director Han, the emergency channel can't wait. Han Lan stared at me. You no longer have a Yundun identity. I know. You cannot access the system privately. I know. She pushed a monitoring terminal toward me. All operations must go through regulated work orders, with complete audit trails. I sat down. My fingers landed on the keyboard. A strange familiarity swept over me. It did not feel like going home. It felt like returning to a battlefield. First Hospital's emergency passage was not fully locked down. That was why I could still remain seated. It was semi-locked. When an ambulance arrived, manual secondary confirmation was required. A 3-minute delay. 3 minutes. In an ordinary system, that might be a statistical error. In an emergency corridor, 3 minutes could be fatal. I checked the alarm chain. The issue came from an external takeover request. Someone had attempted to bypass standard approval and switch the emergency building's access control policy to a new rule template. The template was incomplete, so the system initiated a semi-lockdown. It was not a malfunction. It was preventing a larger malfunction. Han Lan stood behind me. Can it be restored? Yes. How long? Following standard procedure, 8 minutes. And if we bypass protocol, 30 seconds. Han Lan remained silent. I looked up at her. I won't make a private connection. She nodded. I submitted the supervisory ticket, marked it as emergency level, contacted the hospital's local operations team for confirmation, suspended the external policy template, and restored the original rule group. 7 minutes and 42 seconds later, the emergency passage was restored. Shu Yan called almost at the same moment. His voice was hoarse, barely held together. Brother Chen, Lu Jingheng has lost his mind. He's having the overseas team take over the hospital endpoint directly. He said he wants to prove they can do it without you. Who signed off on the work order? No one. There was no work order. I closed my eyes. Screenshots. I don't dare. The company is watching us like hawks now. Then remember the time. There was silence on the other end. Shu Yan said, Brother Chen, I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. My mother is hospitalized at First Hospital. Lu Jingheng knows that. He spoke to me earlier and told me not to say anything. My grip tightened around the phone. Shu Yan, take care of your mother. Don't step forward. But, listen to me. After I hung up, Han Lan looked at me. Your man was threatened. He's just a technician. Technicians are the easiest people to turn into witnesses. It's not the right time yet. That night, Lu Jingheng held a press conference about the hospital incident. Wearing a dark suit, he stood before Yundun Technology's blue backdrop with a steady expression. The emergency access delay at First Hospital has been preliminarily determined to be related to conflicts with old permissions left behind by the former technical director. Yundun has initiated a full replacement process. A reporter asked, is the former technical director you mentioned Jiyu Chen? Lu Jingheng did not answer directly. He only sighed. We do not wish to place blame on any individual, but urban security cannot be held hostage by the emotions of a few people. A few people, emotions, held hostage. Qin Jixia stood beside him. She did not correct him. After watching the live stream in the monitoring center's rest area, I handed the phone back to Han Lan. Han Lan asked, aren't you angry? Anger won't solve the logs. Then, what will? The raw chain of evidence. She looked at me for 2 seconds. Gu Chen, you're more patient than I expected. I said nothing. It was not patience. I knew Cloud Shield's system too well. If I fought back the wrong way, they would make the blame stick for real. I had to wait. Wait for Lu Jingheng to make his next move. Wait until he believed he had seized the key. Wait until that key locked him in. Instead, the day after the hospital incident, I was branded the city-locking madman across the internet. Some said I was bitter after being fired by Yundun. Some said I still held a backdoor to the entire city's security system. Some people turned my photo into a meme. The photo came from a video of Yundun's annual meeting. I stood at the far edge of the stage in a black shirt, looking down at the demo terminal in my hand. Qin Jixia stood in the center of the spotlight, speaking about Cloud Shield's future. Lu Jingheng had not returned then, but now every headline read the same way. The tech recluse who hid for 7 years might control every door in Cloud City. That afternoon, someone splashed red paint across the door of my rented apartment. Murderer, lunatic, get out of Cloud City. The smell of paint was sharp and heavy. Several neighbors peeked from the hallway, their eyes evasive and fearful. I carried out a bucket of water and wiped the doorplate bit by bit. Paint covered half of my name. Uncle Tang arrived. While I was still cleaning, he wore a faded jacket and carried a bag of oranges. The moment he saw the words on the door, his face darkened. Which bastard did this? I don't know. Did you call the police? Yes. Will it help? I did not answer. Uncle Tang put the oranges on the floor, crouched down and helped me wipe the paint away. He had been my late father's friend. He was also an old-school information security engineer. After my father died, he came to see me every year. The year I started college, he gave me an old laptop and said a young man should have something in his hands that could earn him a living. Later, when I joined Yundun, he advised against it. He said a startup could not survive on emotions for long. I did not believe him then. Now, looking at the red paint on my door, his hands trembled with anger. I told you years ago, that girl from the Chin family was never walking the same road as you. She wanted the spotlight on the surface. You wanted stability beneath the system. Sooner or later, you two were bound to part ways. I wrung out the rat. Uncle Tang, now isn't the time for this. Then when is? He looked at me. When they send you to prison. Gu Chen, have you forgotten why your father refused to sell the security framework to those companies back then? I froze. Uncle Tang realized he had said too much and sighed. Your father once said people in security must never gamble with ordinary people's doors. I continued wiping the door. I remember. That was why I had not allowed Cloud City to shut down. That was why, when the hospital incident happened, I immediately connected through the monitoring terminal. That was why, when Chin Jixia pushed the liability statement in front of me, I did not throw out all the evidence and collapse Yundun on the spot. It would not have been hard to bring down Yundun. The hard part was making sure Cloud City did not fall with it. Uncle Tang looked at me and suddenly said, "You're still making things easier for her, not for her." I wiped the last trace of red paint from the doorplate. For this city. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he took a brown paper envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "There are some things I originally didn't want to give you." I looked at him. He pressed the envelope into my hand. "These were left by your father, along with a few paper backups from when you built the sinking boat framework. Don't take them out unless it becomes absolutely necessary." I did not open it. I only set it inside the apartment. After Uncle Tang left, I sat on the living room floor. The old keyboard rested near the edge of the desk. My phone kept buzzing. Curses, private messages, calls from unknown numbers. I did not read any of them. Then Hanlan sent a message. "Tomorrow at 9, at the monitoring center, bring anything that can prove your innocence." I stared at those words and replied, "I need to see the complete log of the hospital incident." 5 minutes later, Hanlan responded, "Approved. Every operation must leave a trace." I turned off the phone. Outside the window, the lights on the elevated highway were still flowing. Like the veins of a city, for the first time, I no longer felt like making things easy for anyone. The next day, Hanlan showed me the regulatory filings. She did not show me everything. She only slid one page across the table. Most of the key content was covered by a folder. Only my name remained visible. Geiyu Chen, Head of Security Architecture. I stared at those words and fell silent. It had been so long since I last saw them. So long that I had almost believed I was only Yundun's technical director. Han Lan said, "Yundun's official statement is that the system anomaly was caused by you maliciously leaving a backdoor. But from the regulatory side, the system is not down." She paused. "It is protecting itself." I looked up. She continued. "Core personnel were replaced abnormally. The management chain became unstable. Logs show signs of tampering. External interfaces repeatedly requested takeover. Cloud Shield determined that the current management chain was untrustworthy, so it entered protection mode. That is what it was designed to do." "I know." Hanlan pressed the folder more firmly against the page. "But the public doesn't know that, and Chin Jixia is unwilling to admit it." "It's not that she's unwilling to admit it. Then, what is it?" "She never truly understood this system in the first place." Hanlan did not deny it. She pulled up the complete log of the hospital incident. "You have 2 hours." Enough. I sat down and began checking. There were many logs. External interface calls, policy template modifications, missing approval chains, rule rollback actions for the emergency department's access control. Every entry told me the same thing. Lu Jingheng was in a hurry. He was eager to prove he could replace me, eager to bypass regulation, eager to take over city-level authority, and eager to pin every trace on me. He was not completely ignorant of technology. That was precisely why he was dangerous. People who know just enough always love to skip procedure. I marked the key timestamps. 17 minutes before the hospital incident, a set of overseas interface calls entered Yundun's test chain. The interface numbers looked very familiar. 3 months earlier, I had flagged them in an inspection report. At the time, I warned Chin Jixia that this external access should not appear in an urban security project. What had Chin Jixia said then? I thought for a moment. She had said, "Jingheng's team has handled major projects overseas. Their testing methods are different from ours. Don't be too sensitive." I did not argue further that day, because she was tired, because the financing roadshow had just ended, because Lu Jingheng stood in her office, smiling as he said, "Director Gu has been in technology for too long. It makes him hostile toward outside teams." Back then, I only found him irritating. Now, I realized he had been afraid I would see through him. 2 hours later, I captured one work order screenshot. Only one. After seeing it, Hanlan asked, "You're not sending the full chain?" "No. Why not? If we release the full chain now, he'll adjust his story. Then, what do you intend to do? Let him continue." Hanlan looked at me. "You're using him as bait." "I'm letting him finish the process himself." She suddenly asked, "Gu Chen, if it is ultimately proven that Yundun's management violated the rules, what do you plan to do?" I saved the screenshot. "Follow the rules." "And Chin Jixia." My hand paused. "She is also part of management." Hanlan nodded. "All right." I stood up to leave. Behind me, she said, "Gu Chen, stop carrying other people's burdens." I did not look back. Not this time. Lu Jingheng's second press conference was even more high-profile than the first. He said Yundun had already located all old permission issues. He said the urban security system required modernized governance. He said they would bring in an overseas security team to completely clear out historical baggage. Historical baggage. Watching the live stream, I suddenly felt those words suited me well. 7 years of sleepless nights. 7 years of bugs fixed, crises averted, and responsibilities quietly handled. In his mouth, all of it became nothing but baggage. A reporter asked, "Mr. Lu, does the historical baggage you mentioned include Ji Yu Chen?" Lu Jingheng smiled faintly. "I will not comment on individuals, but we have indeed discovered that Yundun relied too heavily on certain individual permissions in the past. That is not healthy corporate governance." Qin Jixia sat in the front row. She did not go on stage. She also did not leave. I picked up my phone and logged into my personal account. It had been a long time since I posted anything. My most recent post was from 3 years ago, sharing the news that Yundun had won the City Security Innovation Award. Qin Jixia had asked me to write the caption, "We will make Cloud City safer." I deleted the words in the draft box. Then I posted a screenshot. No long accusation. No emotional statement. Only one sentence. 17 minutes before the hospital incident, who bypassed approval to call the overseas interface. In the screenshot, the interface ID timestamp and regulatory ticket number were clear. After posting it, I turned off my phone. Shu Yan called 5 minutes later. He sounded as if he had just finished an 800-meter sprint. "Brother Chen," it exploded. "Don't take calls inside the company. I'm hiding in the restroom." Lu Jingheng's face turned green just now. President Qin asked him in front of the board about the overseas interface. What did he say? He said, "It was a routine test." "Good. That's all you have to say." That's all he can say. Shu Yan was stunned for a moment. I said, "As long as he says it was a test. He has admitted the interface was called by them." There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Then Shu Yan cursed, under his breath, "Serves him right." Soon, cracks appeared in public opinion. Someone asked, if the hospital incident was Gu Chen maliciously locking the door, why was there an overseas interface call before the incident? Someone dug into Lu Jingheng's RSUMI. Someone investigated his overseas security team. Zhou Ran also called me. I checked the interface number. It's registered overseas. Did you already know? I found out not long ago. Gu Chen, how much more do you have? Enough. She was silent for a moment. I almost wrote you up as a dangerous technician. You still can. I'm not that kind of journalist. Her voice cooled. I'll get to the bottom of this. After hanging up, Qin Jixia called. This time, I answered. Her first question was, why didn't you show me that screenshot first? I found it almost funny. If I had, then what? I would have handled it. Like you handled the liability statement? Her breathing stopped for a moment. Gu Chen, do you have to speak to me like that? Qin Jixia, I'm learning from you. When did I ever? You didn't ask me a single question at the board meeting before making me take the blame. She fell silent. After a long while, she said, Jingheng said it was only a test interface. Then let him submit the test approval. He said the approval is being processed retroactively. Even the emergency access channel at a hospital can be used first and approved later. She had no answer. I heard noise on her end. She must still have been at the company. Someone called her President Qin. Someone else said, the board was waiting. Her voice lowered slightly. Gu Chen, come back. If you return and restore the permissions, we can sit down and talk. What are we talking about? Your position, equity, compensation. Haven't you always felt you never received the place you deserved at Yundun? I can offer you the role of Deputy Chief Technology Officer. I looked out the window. The rain had stopped. Traffic on the overpass was dense and heavy. 7 years, I said. You're only thinking of giving me a place now. She flinched, as if stung. Don't push me. I asked softly, did I push you, or did you push that liability statement in front of me first? She did not answer. I hung up. This time, my hand did not tremble. The next day, Yundun Technology filed a lawsuit against me. The claims were suspected damage to company interests, leaking internal work order information, and interfering with the IPO review. At the same time, they froze my stock options, severance, and all unpaid project bonuses. Lin Man was the one who delivered the legal notice. She looked much more haggard than the last time I saw her. When she handed me the documents, she did not dare meet my eyes. Gu Chen, President Qin said, if you delete that post now, there is still room to settle this. I finished reading the legal notice. Delete the truth. Lin Man parted her lips slightly. President Qin is under a lot of pressure too. I know. The IPO review is only one step away, so I should go to prison. Her face paled. That's not what I meant. That is what Qin Jixia meant. Lin Man lowered her head. I signed for the documents and returned the receipt. She did not leave immediately. After a moment, she spoke quietly. At that board meeting, President Chin did hesitate. I looked at her. She hesitated all the way until she signed the blame document. Lin Man could not answer. Just as I was about to close the door, she suddenly said, Lu Jingheng has been looking for the backup key recently. I stopped. What key? I don't know. I heard him mention it once in President Chin's office. He said if they got their hands on that string, they could prove actual control of the system was not in your hands. She looked up at me, uneasy. Gu Chen, does that thing really exist? I looked at her. You shouldn't be asking that. Her face turned even paler. I closed the door. The backup key. Lu Jingheng had finally reached that step. He probably thought it was a back door I had hidden. Or maybe he had found a certain name in old documents. In Yundan's earliest days, there had indeed been a set of backup keys. To be precise, they were not keys. They were bait. They could not unlock the system. They could only record the people who attempted to bypass regulation. That design was not mine alone. It came from a security principle my father had left behind. A true lock is not afraid of others seeing the keyhole. What it fears is no one knowing who tried to pry it open. I took out the brown paper envelope Uncle Tang had given me. Inside were several old documents. The paper had yellowed slightly. The top page read, Cloud City Public Security System, Risk Protection Agreement, Draft. Further down, I saw handwriting I recognized. My father's. Beside it were my notes. At the bottom was a copy of the official version. The signature page had been clipped separately. I saw Chin Jixia's name. That year, she had signed quickly. 10 minutes before the press conference, while reapplying her lipstick, she told me to flip directly to the last page. Just check the technical clauses yourself. I trust you. Back then, I actually thought those words sounded warm. Now I realized some trust was not respect. It was simply a refusal to understand. My phone rang. Han Lan, Gu Chen, the financial center, the government affairs hall, and the subway security checkpoints have all entered secondary protection mode at the same time. I stood up. Her voice was icy. The police are involved. Lu Jingheng submitted evidence, claiming you remotely manipulated the system to upgrade the protection level. I tightened my grip on the phone. I've already revoked my identity. I know, he doesn't. Han Lan paused. Come to the monitoring center, now. I locked the brown envelope in the cabinet, and took only the old keyboard and a portable hard drive. When I stepped out, traces of red paint in the hallway had not been fully cleaned away. Like a reminder, they had finally pushed me to the edge. And at last they had given me an opening to fight back. The entrance of the monitoring center was packed with media. The moment the car stopped, every camera turned toward me. Gu Chen is here. Gu Chen, did you remotely control the subway security checkpoints? A large number of people are stranded at the financial center. Will you take responsibility? Do you have a personal grudge against Chin Jixia? Police officers were maintaining order at the entrance. Han Lan stood on the steps waiting for me. Her expression was colder than usual. When I got out, someone shoved a microphone almost into my face. Do you regret it? I paused and looked at the reporter. Regret what? Regret falling out with Yundan. I said, I regret not making 3 copies of every signature 7 years ago. Han Lan frowned and led me inside. That line was clipped into a short video that same day. The title was, Gu Chen practically admits it was premeditated. In the interview room, I saw the evidence Lu Jingheng had submitted, a remote access log, a trace record from the so-called backup key, an anonymous attack script. Every piece pointed to me. The police officers looked stern. Gu Chen, when the 3 urban systems entered secondary protection mode, where were you? At the monitoring center. Han Lan submitted the records. He was at our monitoring terminal at the time, reviewing the hospital incident log. His actions were fully recorded. The officer continued, then how do you explain this access record? I glanced at it. It's fake. On what basis? The identity used in this record is invalid. Explain. I passed the file over and pointed to the account identifier. This record claims I used my personal core identity to remotely invoke a protection level clearance. The problem is, I completed my identity deactivation at Yundan 3 days ago. After deactivation, my identity was removed from every management chain. Only historical audit associations remain. A deactivated identity cannot initiate a highest privilege invocation. The officer looked at Han Lan. Han Lan nodded. The regulatory side can verify that. She pulled up the cancellation record. The timestamp was clear. 10 minutes after I left Yundan Tower, my identity deactivation was finalized. 2 days later, the Financial Center Government Affairs Hall and subway security checkpoints were upgraded to Level 2 protection. The logic was broken. The polished evidence Lu Jingheng had prepared now showed its first crack. The officer asked, what about the backup key? Lu Jingheng said, you kept a private backup key for Yundan's lying system. I said, check the access chain. Do you have the authority to check it? I don't. I looked at Han Lan, but the regulators do. The room fell silent. Han Lan did not note immediately. She looked at me. She knew what it meant. Once the bait key access chain was activated, Yundan's problems would no longer be a corporate dispute. They would become an urban public security matter. Qin Jixia, Lu Jingheng, and the board would no longer be able to walk away clean. A few seconds later, Han Lan said, "Pull it up." The screen flickered. The access chain would take time to generate. I sat in the chair and listened to the low hum of the machines. My mind was quiet. Qin Jixia arrived at the monitoring center 30 minutes later. She wore a black coat, her face pale. Lu Jingheng followed behind her. When he saw me, he still managed to smile. "Director Gi, why did you have to take things this far?" I stared at him. "Lu Jingheng, you're getting anxious." His smile stiffened. "I'm only worried about Cloud City. You're worried about the chain." His gaze darkened. Qin Jixia spoke. "Ji Yu Chen, now is not the time for spite." I looked up at her. "Every time you need me to solve a problem, you say that." Embarrassment flashed across her face. Lu Jingheng placed a document on the table. "Director Han, these are the materials we found regarding the backup key. Gu Chen left this string of code in the system back then, and never fully disclosed it to the company. I believe this is how he bypassed the current management chain." Qin Jixia looked at me. There was suspicion in her eyes, and strangely, a trace of anticipation. She seemed to want me to explain, to tell her this was only a misunderstanding. I did not. I only looked at the documents in Lu Jingheng's hands, and suddenly laughed. He thought he had grabbed the hilt of the knife. In truth, he had stepped into the trap. The access chain was generated at 4:16 p.m. Before that, the monitoring center convened an emergency technical hearing. They moved us into a larger conference room. Qin Jixia, Lu Jingheng, Shen Yue, Yundan's legal team, police representatives, and the regulatory technical group were all present. I sat to the side. Like the person on trial, Shen Yue represented the investors. I had met him a few times before. He had never really looked me in the eye. In every meeting, he only asked Qin Jixia one question: "Can technology solve this?" Qin Jixia would say yes. Then, she would look at me. Now Shen Yue's gaze toward me had changed. It was not respect, it was assessment. He had finally realized I might not be a replaceable technical employee. But it was too late. Han Lan tapped the table. "First, let's confirm one fact. Gu Chen completed his internal identity deactivation at Yundan 3 days ago. Since then, he has no longer held authority to access Yundan's highest level permissions." The deactivation record appeared on the large screen. Time. No. Regulatory synchronization. Hash. Everything was listed. Lu Jingheng immediately said, "Deactivating his identity doesn't mean he didn't keep a private backdoor. The truly dangerous things are the risk locks and backup keys he left inside." THE system. I looked up. "That's not a backdoor." Everyone looked at me. I said, "It's a lock." Lu Jingheng smiled. "Director Gi Yu, you're finally admitting you left something in the system." "I admit there is a lock in the system." I looked at Han Lan. "But every lock has a record. Every trigger is documented. An urban public security system cannot rely solely on the company president, and it cannot trust a single technician. It must trust procedure." Han Lan had the trigger sequences projected on the screen. First hospital emergency access, financial center visitor gates, government affairs hall identity verification, subway north loop security checkpoints. Every anomaly was preceded by an external takeover action. Every external takeover lacked standard approval. Every protection mode was triggered to prevent a higher risk policy. Vera. I pointed at the first item. This was not me telling a hospital corridor to delay ambulances by 3 minutes. I pointed at the second. Someone tried to migrate the financial center whitelist to an unregistered template. The third, a temporary test interface was injected into the government affairs hall's identity verification process. Then, the fourth, the risk control policy of the subway security checkpoints was forcibly replaced by an external team. I looked at Lu Jingheng. "Mr. Lu, you claim this is my backdoor. Then explain something to me. Why was someone already trying to pry open the system every time this so-called backdoor was triggered?" The smile finally faded from his face. "These external deployments were meant to fix the problems you left behind. Without approval, what were you fixing? Approval can be completed retroactively in urgent situations." I nodded. "Emergency first, paperwork later." The conference room fell silent. Qin Jixia's face turned pale. At last she asked, "Jingheng, during the hospital incident, was it really your team that acted first?" Lu Jingheng turned to her. His tone remained gentle. "Jixia, the situation was urgent. I was only trying to restore the system as quickly as possible, but Gu Chen restored it first." Qin Jixia's voice was very soft. "And you told the public it was an old vulnerability he left behind." Lu Jingheng was silent for a second. "Because the root cause was indeed his architecture." I laughed. "So, it's me again." He looked at me, his gaze turning cold. "Gu Chen, you don't have to pretend to be innocent. You designed this system so that one day you could turn it against the company, didn't you?" "I designed this system to prevent anyone from treating urban safety as their personal property." "Including who?" He pressed the question. I looked at him. "Including me." After I said that, Han Lan glanced at me. Lu Jingheng stopped smiling. Shen Yue suddenly spoke. Director Han, my only concern is whether Yundun can return to normal. The IPO review has been suspended. If this continues, the losses will be immeasurable. Han Lan's voice was cold. Mr. Shen, the issue right now is not the IPO. Shen Yue frowned. Then what is it? Public safety. Those two words landed heavily. Shen Yue fell silent. At that moment, the access chain finished loading. Han Lan did not open it immediately. She looked at Lu Jingheng. Mr. Lu, are you certain you still want to insist that the backup key was a backdoor deliberately kept by Gi Yuchen? Lu Jingheng seemed to sense something, but he had no way back. He glanced at Qin Jixia. Then he said, I'm certain. The large screen lit up. The first line displayed a string of key invocation requests. Not successful invocations. Attempts. Call time. Device fingerprint. External server. Redirect path. Behavioral verification trajectory. Everything had been recorded. Lu Jingheng's face changed the moment he saw the first line. I spoke slowly. The so-called backup key has never been able to control Yundun. No one in the conference room spoke. Its only function is to record whoever attempts to bypass oversight. It is called a bait key. Qin Jixia suddenly looked at me, as if she had never heard the term before. In truth, she had. She simply did not remember. I continued. When Yundun first integrated with the city's public systems, regulatory requirements mandated an anti-bypass mechanism. Any attempt to use unregistered keys, non-standard approvals, or external servers to force takeover would be recorded by the bait key. Han Lan picked up where I left off. The records are irreversible, undeletable, and cannot be modified unilaterally by Yundun technology. The screen scrolled down. The access devices belong to Lu Jingheng's overseas security team. The external server locations matched the set of IPs Zhou Ran had found. In the behavioral verification logs, the operator's repeated attempts to split and invoke data were clearly visible. The first time was on the day of the hospital incident. The second was before the financial center entered protection mode. The third was before the subway security checkpoint anomaly. Lu Jingheng stood up. This is impossible, Han Lan said coldly. Sit down. This chain must have been tampered with. I looked at him. You were the one who said I maliciously retained backup keys. Sweat appeared on his forehead. You set a trap. I didn't force you into it. I spoke calmly. You reached for it yourself. Lu Jingheng turned to Qin Jixia. Jixia, don't let him confuse the issue. My team was only trying to help Yundun restore permissions. Gu Chen designed the recovery tool as a trap. Qin Jixia's lips were pale. This time, she did not immediately defend him. Lu Jingheng noticed, and his voice became urgent. Have you forgotten? All my takeover actions were authorized by you. You signed the authorization documents. Qin Jixia's expression shifted. Shen Yue immediately looked at her. President Qin, is that true? Qin Jixia did not answer. Lu Jingheng seized on it like a lifeline and slammed a document, onto the table. This is a system takeover authorization signed by President Qin years ago. When Gu Chen designed the underlying architecture, the company reserved the right to take over all permissions. I glanced at the document. Then, I smiled. Lu Jingheng, you didn't even read the full file name. His face stiffened. I took a brown paper envelope from my bag. The paper backup Uncle Tang had given me was well preserved. I placed the official agreement on the table. The cover, read, Cloud City, Public Smart Security System, Risk Protection Agreement. Qin Jixia stared at those words. Her eyes slowly lost focus. I turned to the signature page and slid it in front of her. This is the document you actually signed. She lowered her eyes to her signature. Back then, she had signed it in a hurry. The 3 characters of her name were sharp and beautiful. Beside them was the date, 7 years ago. I said, Article 12, when the core security officer is abnormally replaced, the management chain is disrupted, external keys are invoked, or log tampering is detected, the system automatically enters protection mode. Article 13, no management personnel may bypass oversight to forcibly replace underlying signatures. Article 14, all emergency overrides must go through a regulate, ORI work order. In the meeting room, only the sound of the pages turning remained. Qin Jixia's face turned white. She finally remembered. That year before the press conference, she had sat in the dressing room while I explained the agreement to her. She did not let me finish. She said, just handle the technical terms yourself. I trust you. She trusted me, so she signed. Then she forgot the responsibility that came with that trust. Lu Jingheng tried to speak again. Han Lan directly pulled up the agreement's filing page. Regulatory, approval number, signing parties, scope of liability, chain hash. Everything was complete. Lu Jingheng, Han Lan said coldly. The so-called backup key evidence you submitted actually proved that your team repeatedly attempted to bypass oversight. The remote control records you attributed to Ji Yuchen contradict the fact that his identity had already been deactivated, and your so-called legitimate takeover violates this agreement. Lu Jingheng's face turned ashen. He suddenly pointed at Qin Jixia. She authorized me. Chin Jisia abruptly raised her head. I did not authorize you to bypass oversight. You signed it. That was a risk protection protocol, not authorization for you to steal the key. Lu Jingheng gave an ugly laugh. Chin Jixia, are you trying to wash your hands of this now? Who told me to take over Jiu Chen's authority as soon as possible? Who said the IPO review couldn't be held up by one technical director? Chin Jixia froze. Shen Yue's expression darkened completely. Several directors began murmuring. Chin Jixia turned toward me. For the first time, there was no commanding superiority in her eyes, only panic. Gi Chen, I closed the file. Don't call me that. Her fingers trembled slightly. I didn't know it would become like this. You knew. I looked at her. You just didn't think the consequences would fall on you. Lu Jingheng was still trying to preserve his dignity when the pole ice took him away. He even adjusted his cufflinks, as if this were only a failed business negotiation. But his overseas team's access chain had already been sealed. Zhou Ran had also found something. That evening, Cloud City Daily published an investigative report. A city data project Lu Jingheng had participated in overseas had once been penalized by local regulators for data trafficking. The affiliated company named in the penalty document was connected to the server provider that had accessed Cloud Shield's overseas interface this time. After the report was released, public opinion across the internet reversed completely. Accounts that had called me a madman for locking down the city deleted T8s. Air posts went silent or claimed they had been misled. Zhou Ran sent me a message. The article is out. Sorry for being too aggressive with my questions before. I replied. You're a journalist. She responded quickly. That's why I have to get to the bottom of things. I did not reply again. At Yongdun, everything had descended into chaos. On behalf of the investors, Shen Yue demanded an emergency board meeting. Chin Jixia's CEO authority was suspended. Lin Man later told me that Chin Jixia sat alone in her office for a long time. That night, she went through every old email. Eventually, she found the email I had sent her 7 years ago explaining the agreement. The subject line was, "Key points of the risk protection agreement. Please confirm." She had never replied to it. Back then, she had only sent one line in a chat message. Up to you. She stared at that message record for an hour. Lin Man's voice was very soft when she told me this. She came to the monitoring center to submit supplementary materials. She brought a lead for recovering the board meeting recording. Before the liability statement was signed that day, President Qin and Lu Jingheng had a private conversation, she said. I was passing by the door and heard Lu Jingheng say Gu Chen wouldn't really resist. President Qing said, let him take the blame for now, and we'll make it up to him later. Her eyes reddened as she spoke. I didn't want to get involved at first, but now I feel like if I don't speak up, I'm complicit too. I took the hard drive she handed me. Thank you. She shook her head. Don't thank me. It's too late. It was too late. Many things were already too late. At 9 that evening, Chin Jixia arrived at the monitoring center. She brought no lawyer and no secretary. Her black coat was stained with rain. She stood at the end of the corridor, no longer looking like the composed female CEO of Cloud Shield. She looked like someone who had just realized she was lost. Han Lan glanced at me. You have 10 minutes. No need. But Chin Jixia had already walked over. Her voice was hoarse. Gu Chen, let's talk. For official matters, go to Director Han. It's not an official matter. I stopped. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I'm sorry. It was the first time she had said those words to me. They came out stiffly, as if she had never once practiced them in the past 7 years. I did not respond. She continued. I only wanted to protect Cloud Shield. The IPO review couldn't afford any trouble, and the board kept pressuring. When Jingheng came back, everyone said his overseas experience could help Cloud Shield expand. I thought. She could not finish. So I finished it for her. You thought I would do what I always did, take the blame first. Her face turned paler. I didn't mean to hurt you. Chin Jixia. I looked at her. Once I signed that liability statement, I wouldn't be facing resignation. I would be facing criminal charges. Her tears fell. I know. No, you don't. My voice was flat. All you knew was whether Yundan could go public, whether Lu Jingheng would be held responsible, and whether the board would blame you. You never thought about what would happen to me after I signed, whether I would be taken away, whether I would go to prison, whether my entire life would be destroyed. Her lips trembled. I wanted to retract it later. And then? I smiled. Then the access control denied you entry. The hospital incident happened. The screenshot came out. Lu Jingheng's true intentions were exposed. It wasn't your conscience waking up. She seemed drained of strength and leaned against the wall. Gu Chen, we had 7 years. 7 years is not a free pass. The corridor was so quiet, I could hear a printer in the distance. Chin Jixia looked up at me. Yundan still remembers you. I stopped. She said softly. Everyone says the system only recognizes rules, but I know it recognizes you. The moment something goes wrong, you know exactly how to fix it. Gu Chen, come back. If you come back, I can issue a public apology and give you every position that should have been yours. I looked at her. Suddenly, I remembered our first office 7 years ago. Back then, there was no Yundan Tower, only a small leaking room. She sat beside the printer, eating a cold piece of bread, and said, Gu Chen, once we make it, I'll make sure everyone knows your name. Later, Yundan made it. Everyone knew Qin Jixia. No one knew Gu Chen. I asked her, the Yundan, you say, does it still recognize me? She opened her mouth. No words came out. I nodded. It doesn't recognize me. It recognizes rules. I walked past her. She called from behind me, Gu Chen. I did not stop. 15 minutes later, Hanlan informed me that the final hearing would be held at 9 the next morning. All underlying records of Yundan would be made public. In other words, the last layer of paper was about to be torn away. The day of the final hearing dawned bright and clear over Cloud Ci. Sunlight streamed through the glass curtain wall of the regulatory center. Inside the conference room, however, the air felt cold. Qin Jixia sat across from me. She looked as if she had not slept all night. Lu Jingheng was not there. He was already in police custody, but his lawyer was present. 3 members of Yundan's board had come. Shen Yue sat in the center, his face expressionless. Han Lan projected the complete regulatory filing onto the large screen. 3 matters need to be confirmed today. First, whether Cloud Shield's protection model is lawful. Second, whether Yundan's management engaged in improper takeover attempts and liability shifting. Third, the attribution of the initial security responsibility chain. When the third point was mentioned, Qin Jixia's fingers curled slightly. She had probably guessed something. But guessing and seeing were not the same thing. Hanlan first demonstrated the full chain of the protection mode. From my identity deactivation, submission to the core server room due, or requesting security officer review. From the semi-lockdown of the hospital emergency access channel to the level 2 protection mode at the financial center, government affairs hall, and subway security checkpoints. Every trigger corresponded to an abnormal external takeover action. Every recovery left a trace in a regulatory work order. I did not log into any back-end system without authorization. No deactivated identity made any invocation. No remote operation triggered protection mode. Every piece of evidence Lu Jingheng submitted was dismantled one by one. First, forged access logs. Original hash mismatch. Second, remote call log. The calling identity had already been revoked. The logic did not stand. Third, backup key trace. It was actually the bait key access chain, and the caller was his overseas team. Lu Jingheng's lawyer tried to argue. Han Lan directly instructed the technical team to play the behavioral trajectory reconstruction. On the large screen, every input, every jump, and every split invocation by the operator was as clear as a slow-motion confession. Shen Yue's expression grew darker and darker. So all the anomalies during this period were caused by Lu Jingheng overstepping his authority. Han Lan said, not entirely. The unauthorized operations were the direct trigger, but Yundan's management bears responsibility for improper authorization, wrongful accountability, and attempts to circumvent regulatory oversight. Everyone's gaze fell on Qin Jixia. She did not look up. Han Lan continued presenting the documents. The risk protection agreement appeared once more. Qin Jixia's signature appeared once more. As the legal representative of Yundan Technology, Qin Jixia signed this agreement. It clearly states that any change in core security personnel must undergo regulatory review, and no internal management order may override the urban public security audit process. Shen Yue asked coldly, Ms. Qin, were you aware of this agreement at the time? Qin Jixia looked up. Her lips were pale. I was. Then why did you still let Lu Jingheng take over? She remained silent. Shen Yue slammed the table. Answer me. Qin Jixia closed her eyes. I thought it was only an internal company permission adjustment. I looked at her. She probably knew no one would believe that. Hanlan did not give her time to breathe. Next, the initial security responsibility chain. The screen changed. An earlier project record appeared. The project name was not Yundan. It was Sinking Boat Security Framework. Someone in the conference room read it aloud. Sinking boat? Shen Yue frowned. What is this? Hanlan said. Before Yundan Technology connected to the city's public systems, the underlying architecture was filed under a project named the Sinking Boat Security Framework. The initial submitter was Yu Chen. The screen moved to the next page. Submitter, Yu Chen. Technical Architecture Lead, Gu Chen. Early Joint Testing Consultant, Tang Qiming. Source Note for Security Principles, Gu Yuanzhou. At the sight of my father's name, my fingers curled slightly. It had been a long time since anyone connected that name to Yundan. Qin Jixia saw it too. Her eyes gradually reddened. Han Lan continued. During the later commercialization of Yundan Technology, the project was renamed Cloud Shield. The company's external financing materials emphasized Ms. Chin Jisia's role as founder and her business development contributions. However, the initial submitter of the underlying security framework was Gu Chen. Shen Yue looked at Chin Jisia in disbelief. So Yundun was not originally your work? Chin Jisia did not answer. She stared at the words, sinking boat security framework on the screen, as if, staring at a past she had buried with her own hands. 7 years ago, on the day she renamed the project Cloud Shield, she asked me whether I minded. I said, I did not. Because back then, I thought we were one. Whose name appeared on paper did not matter. Only later did I realize it did. The name written on paper determined who stood in the light when success came, and who got pushed into the fire when trouble arrived. Shen Yue looked at me. For the first time, there was no condescension in his tone. Gu Chen, why did you never speak up? I looked at him. Would it have made a difference? He had nothing to say. I continued. What you needed was a founder who could tell a story, not someone who wrote the underlying architecture. The conference room was silent. I placed the old keyboard on the table. I never intended to fight over these things. Not the IPO, not the financing. I never opposed any of it. But you cannot erase my name with one hand and expect me to go to prison for you with the other. Chin Jisia's tears finally fell. She did not wipe them away. Hanlan closed the file. The regulatory center has reached a preliminary decision. Yundun Technologies' urban public security related operations will enter regulatory trusteeship. Until risks are resolved, the company is prohibited from unilaterally adjusting core system permissions. Lu Jingheng's conduct will be referred to the police and the data security department for further investigation. Chin Jisia is temporarily suspended from CEO authority at Yundun Technology and must cooperate with the investigation into management responsibility. When those words were spoken, Chin Jisia seemed to be emptied out. Shen Yue immediately stood up and spoke in low voices with the other board members. Capital cuts cleanly when necessary. They would not bury themselves for an out-of-control CEO and an overseas expert under investigation. When the hearing ended, Chin Jisia did not leave. She remained in her seat, staring at the record of the sinking boat security framework. I put away the old keyboard. As I passed her, she suddenly reached out and lightly grabbed my sleeve. Gu Chen. I looked down at her hand. She let go, as if burned. I'm sorry, you already said that. I can make it up to you. You can't. Yundun can be returned to you. I looked at her. It was never yours to return. Her face went pale. I continued. Besides, I don't want it anymore. Yundun's regulatory trusteeship was announced that afternoon. At the same time, an official statement clarified that I was not involved in malicious attacks on the city security. STEM. The police lifted the coercive measures against me, but the investigation continued. Lu Jingheng's overseas team was soon found to be involved in a far more complex chain of data transactions. His original plan had been to use Yundun's integration with city systems to turn scattered access control records, visitor logs, traffic data, and identity verification information into tradable assets. Yundun's IPO was only a stepping stone. Chin Jisia was his ticket inside, and I was the gatekeeper he needed to remove. Zhou Ran's in-depth report carried a restrained headline, "Who is prying open the door to Cloud City?" The article did not portray me as a hero. It did not portray Chin Jisia as an innocent victim either. It said something very clear. In a city-level security system, the most terrifying thing is not a technical error. It is when someone believes power can bypass rules. After the report was released, Yundun's entrance was swarmed by journalists. I did not go. Xu Yan came to my apartment. He stood at the door, eyes red. "Brother Chen, my mom's surgery went well." "That's good." He handed me a USB drive. "These are the work order screenshots I secretly saved earlier. Every time Lu Jingheng made us bypass procedure, I captured what I could. I took it. If you hand this over now, it might affect your job." He smiled faintly. I resigned. "Made up your mind?" "Yes." He looked at the old keyboard on my desk. "Brother Chen, are you still going to work in security?" "I am." "Then, I'll follow you." I glanced at him. "I don't have a company right now." "Then I'll wait until you do." He said it quickly, as if afraid I would refuse. "I've worked with you for 5 years. At least I know one thing. You won't make me take the fall." I smiled slightly. The salary might not be as high as Yundun's. Yundun still owes me 2 months of overtime pay. After saying that, he laughed first. Then, the laugh faded. "Brother Chen, President Chin came to see me." I said nothing. She asked, "How you've been?" "What did you say?" I said, "You're still alive." Xu Yan looked at me. She cried. I placed the USB drive on the table. That's her business. That evening, Uncle Tang came too. He brought a bottle of wine. When he saw that the red paint on my door had already been covered by property management, he snorted. "That's more like it." The first thing he saw when he entered was the old keyboard on the table, still keeping it. "Yes, don't keep it too close. Use old things too long, and your hands will get used to them." I poured him tea. weren't you the one who told me not to be soft-hearted? I told you not to be soft-hearted with people. I didn't tell you to throw yourself away with them. Uncle Tang took a sip of tea and suddenly sighed. If your father saw today, he'd probably scold you. Scold me for what? For taking so long to bring the thing back. I said nothing. Uncle Tang took another piece of paper from his bag. This is a sentence your father wrote beside a test document back then. I kept a copy. I took it. There was only one handwritten line. A system is meant to protect people, not those in power. I stared at it. For a long time. Uncle Tang said, open your own lab. Stop being someone else's foundation. I folded the paper and put it away. I'm already looking for a place. Have you thought of a name? I was silent for 2 seconds. Sinking boat. Uncle Tang's eyes reddened immediately. He lowered his head, took a sip of tea, and muttered, little bastard. Chin Jisia waited a week before she saw me again. At the base of Yundan Tower. That day I had gone to the monitoring center to sign a consulting agreement and passed by on my way back. She stood by the roadside, in an ordinary gray coat. No driver. No secretary. Gone was the presence that once made people clear a path for her wherever she went. When she saw me, she instinctively took a step forward. Then stopped. Gu Chen. I looked at her. Is there something you need? She forced a faint smile. It looked awkward. I waited here for you for 3 days. You didn't have to. Her eyes reddened. I didn't know where else I could see you. I said nothing. She took a document out of her bag. This is a summary of Cloud Shield's equity and project interests. I asked the lawyers to review it. Your founding contributions were never properly settled. If you're willing, I can cooperate in signing a supplementary agreement. Chin Jixia. I cut her off. Do you still think this is what I want? Her hand froze. Then, what do you want? I looked at her. She had asked me the same question 7 years ago. Back then, Yundan had just secured its first round of investment. She was drunk, leaning against the server room door, and asked me, Gu Chen, what do you want? I said I wanted Yundan to truly protect this city. She laughed at me and said I did not sound like an entrepreneur. I sounded like an old government official. Now, she asked again. I had no answer for her. I don't want anything. Her face turned pale. What about the 7 years? Wind swept past the front of Yundan Tower. The electronic screen was playing a new announcement. Yundan accepts regulatory trusteeship and will undergo comprehensive rectification. Dean Jixia's promotional video once looped endlessly. Now there was only cold bare text. I glanced at it. Treat those 7 years as one system miscalculation. Chin Jixia's tears fell. The words seemed to make her stagger. Do you have to be this ruthless? Ruthless. I looked at her. I didn't ask you to take the fall for Lu Jingheng. She could not speak. I didn't freeze your stock options. I didn't sue you. I didn't push you in front of every camera and let the whole internet call you a madman. She covered her mouth as tears kept falling. Gu Chen, I really know I was wrong. I believe you. She looked up, a faint light appearing in her eyes. I continued, but I won't look back. The light went out. She stood there, suddenly unfamiliar. Perhaps she was not the unfamiliar one. Perhaps I had finally stepped out of the past 7 years. She whispered, if Lu Jingheng had never come back, would things have been different between us? I thought for a moment. Only a little later. She froze. What do you mean? Even without Lu Jingheng, there would have been someone else. I said, if you always believed I was expendable, this day was bound to come. Chin Jixia stood frozen in place. I walked past her and continued forward. This time, she did not call after me. After walking a long distance, I looked back. She was still standing at the base of Yundan Tower. The building she had once been proudest of was still lit up, but it no longer listened to her. 3 months later, Sinking Boat Security Lab officially opened. It was a small place. An old office building in the west district of Cloud City. There was a breakfast shop downstairs, and the owner started steaming buns at 6 every morning. Xu Yan complained that the building was too run down, but on the day we signed the lease, he was more excited than anyone. Brother Chen, the internet cables here can be rerouted, and the server room can be set up. The elevator is a little slow, though. Slow is good. He did not understand. Why? Safety. He paused for a moment, then called it an occupational disease. Uncle Tang brought over a potted plant. He said a tech company could not have only servers. It needed something alive too. He also wiped the old keyboard clean and placed it on my office desk. Keep it. I looked at him. Didn't you say that if I use old things too long, my hands will get used to them? Just leave it there to look at. I'm not letting you use it. He snorted. It's a reminder. Don't stay up late for someone else again. I smiled. I'll try. The appointment letter from the monitoring center arrived the same day. Hanlan came in person. She stood at the entrance of the lab and looked around. It's smaller than I imagined. We're just getting started. The next security upgrade for Cloud City requires an external consultant. Are you willing to take the role? I accepted the appointment letter. Through work order procedure. Hanlan smiled. Every step leaves a trace. Then, I'll take it. She looked at the old keyboard on my desk. Still keeping it? Yes. Chin Jisia has been cooperating with rectification recently. I did not respond. Hanlan did not continue. She only said, Cloud Shield has become much more stable after entering regulatory trusteeship. It no longer relies on a single company's backend. That's good. Don't you want to log in and take a look? I shook my head. No need. Outside the window, the access control lights of Cloud City lit up one by one. The emergency passage at First Hospital opened and closed again. The subway gates let passengers pass in orderly lines. The turnstiles at the financial center scanned ordinary ICE workers, one after another. In the government affairs hall, an elderly person slowly passed through the verification checkpoint with an ID card. The city was still running. It did not need to know who Guchen was. It did not need to remember who Yundan had once belonged to. It only needed to lock itself by the rules when someone tried to pry its doors open. Shu Yan called from outside. Brother Chen, our first order is here. I walked out. He handed me the project documents. It was a local security system upgrade for a community hospital. A small project, too small for Yundan to have cared about in the past. I opened to the first page. The requirement was simple. Emergency channel priority. Guarantee. I looked at those words for a long time. Then I picked up a pen and wrote the first principle in the top right corner. The system protects the people, not those in power. After writing that, I closed the file. The old keyboard lay quietly on the office desk. This time, I did not log into anyone else's backend. This time, I opened only my own system.